Hello, welcome to the We in Wellness Conversations and Meditations with Dr. K.
Nice
Hi,
flowers in the
Marga.
back.
I got the Simpasuchils. Tis the season.
Yeah. I wish I
Um,
could live in Mexico just for that, you know?
I mean, you could.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could. You're right.
Nice. Yeah, I guess they import them up to California. I don't know.
I think so.
Nice, nice. Well, welcome to the podcast. And would you mind introducing yourself? I mean, I know you pretty well, but I think people listening don't. So,
Well, I'm Marcos. I'm the board chair of a nonprofit called Karmic Action, where we do a lot of mutual aid and we do a lot of community building. I also help with a nonprofit called Food Not Bombs. We're just a bunch of cool anarchist folks coming together to feed houseless people in Skid Row. Um, Other than that, I am a father of two beautiful young girls and a human being. That's it,
nice. I mean, being a human being is a accomplishment.
right? Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so tell me about Food Not Bombs, pretty please.
Well, I've been doing Food Not Bomb since can't remember, but it's been more than 10 years for sure. And we're a collective non-hierarchical, decentralized. So that means, we extend and invite out to every like-minded member of the community. We operate on a model where everybody has a voice. There's no set roles. There's no authority figures. So everyone helps each other out in order to, come together and help feed the houseless in Skid Row in LA, and also, different branches of our actions, I guess. We also help feed protests. We also help feed and come together for different mutual aid, direct actions whenever they pop up.
Cool. Okay. So treat me like I don't know anything. I'm gonna give you license to mansplain.
Thank you.
I know. Very exciting. What is mutual aid? I think we hear that phrase a lot and not everyone knows what it means.
Well, okay, so let me start by saying that I'm not a scholar when it comes to a lot of these terms. And also, I don't like to adhere to, say, any specific definition of it. I can give people my experience with it and how I operate within that concept, which I think is better, or at least for me, easier. Um, but mutual aid is a practice in which one member of the community tries to help another member of the community, or one member of another community tries to help somebody else by either monetary or direct action, or some kind of building effort. So, for example, for us, when it comes to mutual aid, we work with some of the other nonprofits around LA. Back, I want to say a few years ago, there was a collective called the Burrito Project, and they would make burritos and then they would bike them, around LA and feed people that wanted to get fed. And so we would help them either with, providing produce, or, um, you know, delivering food, or anything that they might need. Another form of mutual aid is we work with different organizations that are, in, protest organizing, and a lot of the times they don't have the ability to feed, say, 100, 200 people that show up to a protest, but having food at a protest is one of the biggest building blocks. And so that mutual aid helps in that we help further the direct action, while at the same time we help feed the people that need to be fed.
Nice. Okay. I feel like I was about to say something coded very religiously, like you're doing God's work, but I won't. You're doing human work that many people could participate in. If someone wanted to get involved in mutual aid support, what does that process look like? Do you just show up at a protest and go, "Hey, you're doing this and I want to help"?
Yes, that's what you do. There's no, you show up at a protest, you show up wherever you want to do the mutual aid work. Like I said, there's probably different ways of describing these things in a more um, proper way, but what I can only give people my experience, right? If you are interested in doing mutual aid work when it comes to either community building or direct action or learning and educating people, whatever you feel like you want to do the mutual aid work in, community gardens, whatever it is, you show up to where you want to be, and then you find the people that are doing the ground. I'm sorry, they're doing the work on the ground, and you let those people guide you. I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around wanting to have all the information before you get started, wanting to build up all this confidence and skill building before you actually take that first step. But what you'll find when it comes to a lot of anything is that you have to get started, you have to make mistakes, you have to take that first step and be uncomfortable. Because that's what a lot of this is, radicalizing yourself, because that's what you do, is being uncomfortable and being, okay with that, kind of sitting in that discomfort, meeting people that will challenge your conventions, because you might think, well, you just said it right now. It's like you're doing the Lord's work. But when you show up and you do, let's just say, some of the food drive stuff, you'll meet people that are not religious, that are very anti-religion, but yet they're doing a lot of work that coincides with the religious work. So you start to meet people that may challenge that convention, and you have to kind of sit in that discomfort. But you wouldn't necessarily get there unless you take that first step, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like a very come as you are space, but please defer to the people who know what they're doing when you start. Right.
Yeah,
How did you start and why?
man. I was very young when I started, and it's gonna sound really cheesy and cringe, but I was in my early 20s, if not late teens, when I started. And as a very mature young boy, let me just put that out there first. Um,
Sure,
and
that's totally believable.
some might say I still am. Um, but I was dating somebody at that time, and this person, they had a lot of going on for themselves. They were, you know, they were doing very well. They were doing a lot of activism work when it came to education, and I was just, partying and drinking like any, early 20-year-old does. And so I would sit around and I'd be like, man, like this person is going and doing all these things. We're the same age. And I was just sitting around with my friends one day and I was like, we should do something, guys. We can't just be sitting around here doing nothing. And so we were spitballing, and then we came up with doing a toy drive and a clothing drive and a canned food drive, and then going to Skid Row and then distributing it however we could. Um, that led to us starting like a quasi nonprofit ourselves. And then because that was really hard and just navigating through that. I stumbled upon Food Not Bombs way back then, and I showed up. I've always been really, I've never felt really safe in the religious space, so I never wanted to join an organization that had hierarchy, that you know but adhere to that kind of dogma. But when I showed up and I saw that everybody there was really chill, everybody there, kind of thought along the same lines that I did. It was really fun. It was really safe, and I just kept coming back. 10 plus years later, here I am. And now I'm the old guy that welcomes all the young people.
Nice. I love the cycle of that. It's almost like you're an elder in the space, but you're not old.
I mean, the salt and pepper might beg to differ, but
Funny. And I can also say I will agree with the cringe. Um, in the sense that I'm someone who has been brought into really intensely beautiful work and spaces and community because I was dating someone or because I was interested in someone. It's happened to me.
they're your
um,
partners. They make you better.
yeah, yeah. As long as you choose wisely. But I'm also glad that you stayed in the space, assuming that that relationship ended at some point.
Oh yes, it did.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, great. So that's how you got started. Now we know how other people can start. There's not a lot of skill building beforehand. Um, maybe tell me a bit about karmic action. Why is it called karmic action?
Karmic Action, the nonprofit itself has a long running history. I've just recently started to help out, but it is a the nonprofit itself has a really nice like founding story. They mainly focus on community projects, so youth projects. They focus on projects that help people um, avoid driving cars and do more walking, do more biking, to better the health of the community, that kind of stuff. A lot of hiking projects, a lot of hiking programs for the youth to learn about you know, culture and ancestors and, the good that it is to be out there in nature. And I believe that the nonprofit was founded when the two of the founders they biked from and I'm gonna probably get this wrong, but they biked from the U.S. all the way to Central America or South America. And so in that ride, they sort of, had an awakening, motorcycle diaries kind of style. And they were like, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be able to impart more good onto people. Then when they came back to the States, they decided to go the nonprofit route. And, from what I understand, it's never easy to do the non-conventional stuff. It's never easy to do the, hey, we want to focus on the youth, we want to focus on the community, and we don't want to, you know, um, perpetuate a lot of these stigmas, or we don't want to, you know, um, take a lot of these cookie cutter grants and just go with them, but we want to do something from the ground up. We want to talk to the community and see what they need and make them better in that way. That's never quite easy because there's not, having a lot of having a lot of experience with grants myself, that's never that easy. I have a lot of experience when it comes to grant writing, and when it comes to public and private, most of the time it is a very one-sided intent. So, say the grant will be for bettering the community by offering more, available foods to people that are in need. But the stipulations of the grant will be that you can only offer certain foods, and you can only get the either donations or the money in this way, and it'll be very prohibitive when you want to offer, say, a healthier and more fresh options to people. And so that sort of clashes with the intended purpose. But the people that are on the side of writing those grants, they will get whatever they need from just that the grant being out there. And so when you want to do something from the ground up and ask the community what they need, it's a little bit harder, especially when you're a small nonprofit and not like a really big nonprofit that can, lobby and do all these things. Um, yeah, I think that's the best way I can put that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I've been thinking about this because I will speak for myself in an attempt to align with some other people that I may or may not know. But I know that for me, I can get, what's the word I want to use? Overwhelmed when I'm facing people's struggles in like real time. I mean, I can go into crisis action. This is going to sound like it has nothing to do with what you're talking about, but it does, I promise. Um, I mean, I can deal with something in the moment that's a crisis, that's emotional or practical, or someone's in need of something. And then I have to go like clear off or reset myself to come back into that space. And I'll be honest, I can be intimidated by the idea of supporting people on a front line in that way. But you seem to have a way where you can just like do it and stay in a place of planning and you're fine. How do you do that?
Um, Work myself like a workhorse until burnout. I think that's the best way to define it, you know? Because you juggle a lot of things, and a lot of us are out there juggling a lot of things. You know, you do whatever direct action you're doing. You do whatever community building you're doing. You're keeping up with your networks. You're being a human being, right? Like I'm being a father. If I have anything that needs to be handled, like with work or anything like that. I have a young dog that I take care of. Like all these things are pressures and responsibilities. And I wish that I could say like, oh yes, there's this really great like work-life balance, but there really isn't, So I try to, and a lot of the folks in the communities that I belong to, we try to get a respite whenever we can. And we lean on other people in our community to say, hey, I can only do this much. And then someone else takes over and then they do that much. So there's I want to say in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of focus on having more self-care and more attention to self-care. I think that there's this misconception that to be in the struggle, you have to be struggling. You have to keep fighting, and it's true, because there's a lot of people that don't get to rest. Right, there's a lot of people that constantly live in struggle. I'm coming from a place of privilege because I can drive home and just close my door and then like that's my rest. There's a lot of people that don't get to do that, right? So what I would say is I try to now I'm a lot better at it. I try to find ways to disconnect and have time for myself. But it really isn't an exact science because sometimes, my battery will be on very low. And then I'll have to do, 10 more things that have nothing to do with what I'm doing, at the moment. Um, like you said, it's like you run into people, you try to hold space for people, you're in situations that are high stressed, and then you're out of that situation, but then it's like, okay, well now you have work, and now you have to drop off your kids at school. Well, now they have homework, and then all these things are going through your mind, and you have to find a way to maybe not balance because I think it's difficult to balance those things, but you have to find a way to disassociate from the high stress in your life and then find yourself present in what you're doing, right? Like be able to hold space for my kids so that they can come to me and they can have a good moment with me so that I'm not in my head, still thinking about like, well, the cops and the fascists and, like, how dare they and all these things, right? So that I'm not still like raging inside. I have to be able to disassociate from that at times. And that's where the community networks, that's where your own community really helps out because you're able to reach out to people and say, hey, you know, um, I'm not able to do this action or I'm able to do this up until this time. I need support doing this. And then someone else in the community will step in and they'll say, hey, I'll relieve you. I'll do this. And then you'll be able to sort of have some time to disconnect from that. Because that's, in my opinion, that's the best shot at it.
Got it. Okay. So it is community, which, surprise, surprise, the we and wellness is very community forward. So I think I understand. Um, I'm going to ask a more specific question. How did you cultivate community that you would and could rely on?
it's just kind of a more broad answer, but I think when I was younger, my I think your maturity level and the energy that you put into life is what you get back, right? Because when I was younger and I was a lot more immature, my friendships, my community, they would essentially return the energy that I would give. And at that time, I wasn't very emotionally aware. I didn't have a good handle on, the way that I dealt with conflict. So my community reflected that. My community was a lot of folks that, found ways to cope with trauma, cope with conflict. There was a lot of, rash decisions, quick to anger, drinking, like all these things, they were reflected in my community because that was the energy that I was giving, right? And through the years, I start to change, I start to get softer. And so the community that I cultivated then, because the energy that I was putting out was that. And I truly believe that it's that way because you have to be able to put out the energy that you want to get back. Because I think even earlier on in, whether it was radicalism or activism, earlier on, I was still, immature and doing all these things. And even though I would be part of communities, I wouldn't have community. So I wouldn't feel like I belonged in certain spaces because I was still like, oh, well, I want to go and party or I want to go and hit this bar with these people. And not to say that those two things can't mesh, but the type of energy that I had, which was I'm still not aware of my emotions, so I need something to drown a lot of my, emotions in because I'm not ready to handle them. It didn't quite mesh with some of the community that I was a part in. So I could be present in that community to help out in certain things, but I wasn't necessarily a member in that community because people couldn't rely on me because I would be um, sometimes I would be randomly my the way that I would handle my emotions and conflict would be random. So once I started to be more aware, once I had my girls, once I became a father, once I became more self-aware, I started to put out different energy. And then the people that gravitated around me, they changed, right? Because the people that didn't have that same kind of energy, I didn't feel comfortable with. I would be like, oh, like that's not what I'm trying to do right now, or I don't feel like going this route, or things would get tiring. And then, slowly the community that you're in that meshes with the things that you're thinking about, that matches your ideals, your activism, that matches, who you are as a person, you start to grow with them. So I'm very happy about where I am right now.
Wow. Um, I mean, I think I understand. Although different different types of community that I've been in, different different reasons why I felt I didn't fit, but same exact story arc. So also no girls, but so that sounds like a lot of differences. But I'll explain what I mean. Because now I've just made it like there's so many differences, but I did the same thing. It makes no sense. Um, for me, uh, I grew up in a family where um, understanding other people's needs was how I got through it, even if they didn't know they had those needs. Like, and so I moved through friendship and life that way. And I thought that was always my role. It was like, well, I've been designed for this, so what else should I be doing? When that's not the energy I want back. I don't want people. I mean, it would be lovely to be supported without me knowing I'm being supported, in a certain way, but it's not an actual connection. And so in my early 20s and in my teens and yeah, all of those friend circles and groups, I spent a lot of time playing the background a lot. Don't center me, don't pay attention to me, but I'm here to cheer you on when you need it. And I'm not going to input any of my actual personality into this because you wouldn't want that anyway. Um, and then some things changed where I got to the point where I couldn't mask anymore because I was like actively grieving or um overwhelmed to a state that I just couldn't pretend. And I got caught out a couple of times. We'll just call it the crying in public series of times. Ooh, okay. Very uncomfortable. And now I don't mind crying in front of people as much, but my God, I hated it then. Um,
Mhm.
and with that, I was able to see, oh, these people actually want to know the real me, even though I'm showing them what I think is the worst part. And that is what softened me up. And then it became more mutual. And now new people who have floated into my life are more emotionally capable, or I'll say they're more resonant with um with what I am, I don't know, purpose towards doing in life or where I want to be at. So I think I think that aligns.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I do want to mention one thing. I feel like, and it may not be a misconception, but I do feel like people think that depending on what struggle you're a part of, right? Depending on, where your, political ideology falls in, your or your network, you're different than, say, someone who's not so. And what I'm meaning to say by all this is there's there's anarchist circles, there's communist circles, there's socialist circles, there's, far right circles, whatever you want to call them, but there's a lot of circles out there of political ideologies, and we don't often think about, well, how do those interpersonal relationships work, right? Is it different than someone who's, just meeting each other at work, or, are friends of friends, that kind of thing. And it's like it's the very same thing. Like you could be someone who's very politically aware, who, is very in tune with the changes that need to happen, who is very passionate about making change and helping people. And you could be also a really horrible person, right? Like inside, in your interpersonal relationships, because I feel like it's so layered that, you know, just because you are, say, doing something on one end doesn't mean that it transfers. It should, right? Because it's all interconnected, but oftentimes it doesn't. So there's a lot of talks within those groups, especially decentralized groups, to the left of, say, the Overton window, about, accountability for men to, deal with misogyny, accountability for men to deal with any kind of violence towards women, accountability for men to take accountability for our own actions, that kind of thing. So within the community, there's also a lot of growth and a lot of improvement that needs to happen, because you do extend a big blanket invitation to people and say, hey, if you feel this way about our current situation, if you feel like you should, and that's how you do it, right? Like you do class awareness. And so you tell people, hey, if you're tired of living this way, if you think that your conditions for living should be better, come join us, come help with, the effort. But you don't ask, well, are you also radicalized in this way of thinking? Have you been able to work through these issues? You don't ask that because you want people to come and be part of the struggle. As they get to know you, as they get to know your groups, as they get to form relationships, then they will become radicalized as well. But that's never a given. And so that's something that people have to work on as they grow within, I think, anything.
Yeah. It's I appreciate that the work is now inclusive of all sectors of someone's life, of all facets. Because I think that's one of the best things about community is like sharing and growing with each other through example and connection. Um, and it's reminding me, God. So I remember having this conversation as a freshman in college. I had locked in with my little group, and one late night we were having a conversation around, do you want to be with a great man or a good one? Because they're never the same. Meaning if you're with Malcolm X, the work that you're doing to support him means the world is changing in this big, expansive way. But you're at home by yourself with all the kids, and he's probably not quite gonna get how to do that and do the public thing. And there's so many examples of that throughout history and time. And I'm also not trying to make it just a gender thing. Like, I guess if someone was partnered with Joan of Arc, like maybe that would also be difficult. Um, but the fact that there's been rhetoric around that choice of like, is it this or is it that? And finally, society is maybe starting to be like, what if everyone could do a little bit of both? What if? So, okay, I'm saying all of that because I'm curious about your thoughts about it. But also, I guess the question would be, um, is the work that's done in a home space or in a smaller community or on a smaller scale just as important as work that's done to like shift laws or um, whatever is a much broader scope?
Well, so to start with the latter, I happen to be, I happen to be a commie. I happen to be an anarchist of sorts. So electoral politics are not really my bag. So when you talk about like, is this work better than that work or are they equal? I would say, and this is just my own opinion, everybody has their own ways of looking at life, but I would say that electoral politics are rigged, right? To favor one side versus another. And it isn't one political side. It is one sector, one very small sector of the population versus another. So when it comes to enacting laws or pushing policy, I'm not very optimistic about that side. However, the other side, the community building side, whether you're working with folks like the Sierra Club, where you go into communities and you look at the environmental impacts of say the local power plant or the local battery recycling center, and you look at how that is affecting people, or you look at how traffic is smog and traffic is worsening the health of people in the community. When you look at how a community garden might make it easier for people to have access to fresh produce or just have more contact with nature and how like that betters their emotional health. When you look at expanding pedestrian ways and public transportation so people don't have to rely on having a car and having that expense and being exposed to um, you know the state controlled violence in that way. When you look at how to put communities together via, direct action and get them to understand, the similarities that they have versus, the differences that, might be politicized. I think that that's way better work. I think that that's way um, more prevalent as far as the need. And I think that that to me at least is definitely the way to go if you had to choose one way or another. But that's also because that's my bag, right? That's what I do. That's where I've developed in. So maybe if I had grown up to become like a constitutional lawyer, I would be here saying like, no, I think that we should you pay people to lobby better, like that kind of thing. But to go back to it, I think that the first thing that you said was so the first thing that you said was you know I guess it was a juxtaposition, right, of like choosing your mate and in the struggle and having to take the good with the bad. I feel like there's a lot of problematic, I don't know, um, conceptions that we have to accept when we take that premise. And because it always benefits the man. Like I don't think like Asada Shakur's husband, I don't think anybody's like, well, if my significant other was Asada Shakur, what would I do? It's always like Malcolm X. It's always like, Martin Luther King. It's never, the other way around. But I also feel in the same way that we were just talking about, direct action in the community versus a larger, more national approach. I think in that same way, there's a fallacy in looking at who's the person that's going to make the greatest impact. Like there is no one person that is going to make the greatest impact. for every, and once again, my opinion, it could be, people can look at it different ways, right? But for every, without naming names, for every big, iconic, revolutionary, person, you have many, 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 many smaller, more community based, more grassroots, people and communities and networks that help push that effort, I don't think that any one person is going to shift the needle any kind of way. And I think that's a tool of capitalism to tell us that there's going to be one chosen person that's going to come and lead the revolution, but there's not. There never has been when you really look at it, right? So I think that when we look at, well, I have to put up with X thing because this person is good for the cause. I think that we delude ourselves into thinking like because this person is good, but there's nothing great about that person. That person, if they're doing the work, if they're taking in theory and they're understanding what they're doing and they're pushing forward what they're doing, there's nothing absolutely pivotal about that particular person. So they shouldn't get any special treatment. Whether it is in the community or in a relationship, right? You're still responsible for being a person. You're still responsible for being a good partner, no matter what you're doing, right? Like we were just talking about this. I could be, and not to say like I'm like the greatest person at protesting, right? But like I could be out there you know, um, doing like feeding the protests and stuff. But when I come home, my kids aren't going to be like, "Oh, Dad, like take a load off, Dad. Like, yeah, have a seat on the couch. We'll make ourselves dinner. Like we'll call an Uber. We'll call an Uber from the school and get ourselves here." Like that's not what happens. I'm still coming home and I'm still expected to be a father to help them with the things that they need to be helped with. There's people that are on the front lines that are fighting tear gas, that are fighting, all these raids and all these other things. And then they have to go about their whole day, have to go to work. They have to deal with, family, drama, family structures. So I think that there's no excuse for not being a whole person. I think that there's no great benefit that you're bringing to the cause that will excuse you from being a fully grown and um, self-aware person.
Wow. Um, I'm like, if only I could have broadcasted that to the people the generation before me, I'd be a much more well-adapted human. But yeah, no, I'm all that to say, I totally agree. That's quite beautiful and a challenge, but worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You mentioned earlier that you're like really, what was the word you used? Content? You're really, you didn't say proud, but like where you're at. You're like the place that I've come to. This stage of my life. Like I'm good with this. Um, how did you get to that feeling of rest, of comfort with where you are?
I think I think it's you just well for me, I just tired myself out. You know, I had a lot of, I had a lot of different opinions and ways that I would deal with life. And I got to a point where it's like, well, this became very tiring, right? Working myself up and to burnout became tiring. So now I find ways to deal with that. Being around community that didn't make me feel comfortable or safe, like that became tiring because my guard had to be up a lot. I had to be watchful of people, and then being around community that was not harmful, but that I wasn't ready for because my emotions weren't there yet. That was also tiring because my nervous system was always firing off, right? For no reason. So I think at some point all these things just became very tiring. And then like you said, it's like you get to a point of where you just need to rest. And then you realize that you're safe. You realize that you've come a long way. You realize that, you've created a space for yourself. And I think for me at least, I had to get tired enough to get there because my mind would just race. and I would just be trying to look for things to do and get into until I was like, okay, like I'm good here. Like when you're on a hike and then you don't make it to the top, but where you're at, you're like, whew, let me just take a second here, enjoy the view and have my lunch and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Um, that makes sense that it took getting tired. Um, did you look for any tools or resources after you got tired or when you realized you were tired and didn't know what to do about it?
I had resources, I had tools on the way up. Like I guess that's where I was able to get to where I am. Um, but like the community that you deal with, or the community that I have the pleasure of dealing with, I was able to learn a lot more about theory. I was able to learn a lot more about self-help, mental health, about, taking care of myself, about the way that my actions were perceived and where that came from. Therapy really helped a lot. I think that anyone, kind of little plug here, but anyone can benefit from therapy, right? Especially if you're, anyone, I guess, can benefit from that. But I also think, and I don't think that we give enough credit to this. I also think that we steal, like maybe this is a big generalization, but like men, I think that we steal a lot from women because I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of women, a lot of very, strong, passionate women that taught me a lot, throughout my radicalization that were like, hey, like this is cringe, don't do this, like the way you're saying this, it's coming off this way. And in the moment, I would be like, but why? I would never, because I'm, one of the, good
I'm
ones,
the
right?
good one.
And you see me out here doing, but they'd be like, yeah, all that is great, but you see me doing this too. There's nothing special. So like get your stuff in order, right? So I was able to take a lot, and when I say steal, I mean take a lot from them, and what I gave back to them wasn't a whole lot. So the way that I repaid that was I try to do my best to educate people around me, of course, but also give back to the community as much as I can because I had the pleasure of learning from a lot of people, mainly women that were there to, help with the struggle, further the cause. And on their way, they did not mind stopping a bit and saying, hey, when you say this, it sounds like this. When you do this, it looks like this. Why are you doing this? Think about it, never accusatory, always in a way of teaching you something, challenging a convention that you might have. So, yeah, those were my, sources and resources and tools. Theft.
Theft, yes, the emotional labor of knowing men. Yeah, what I was alluding to about how I was raised, yeah, a lot of emotional labor from a very young age. So, um, you're welcome, but also reparations. Okay. Um, but no, I mean, to your credit, I remember when we met, that was something you would say. You were like, I don't want to make you do extra work. I am learning that I'm someone who accidentally used women, borrowed, stole in this way, and I'm really trying to unlearn it. Like I do remember having those conversations. So, I'm glad that now it's less something you need to vocalize to get around. Like you probably do it a little more instinctively at this
Yeah. I mean, I've grown a lot more in that way, or at least I'm more self-aware in that way, you know? Yeah.
which is yeah, thank God. To this is the example that we can be like one exists. That's what I'm trying to say. I also have on record a Mexican man saying that he believes in therapy. So thank you. Fun. Okay. Last question. Um, Actually, I'm gonna pause for a second. Is there anything that you may have wanted to say or thought I should have asked that we didn't do?
No, I think we covered everything. I think if anything, I wanted to mention um, the effort, right? So we talked a little bit about food not bombs. We talked a little bit about activism, and oftentimes, you know, people don't see the the act of feeding someone as very radical, especially when like there's a lot of religious organizations that do it and they do it to indoctrinate, instead of help, let's say. So I just wanted to point out how, well, the way that I see it, food is used as a tool of oppression, and by making that accessible to people, we look for it to be a very radical act, right? So in the history of things, here in the United States, at least, um, the food programs that we have aren't really they're not really geared towards the best nutritional value for someone. And the food programs that we have, the origin of them came from, very racist beginnings. So the way that we use food as a tool of oppression, it really goes to show why the country's so polarized in those ways. And that's why in local communities, I feel like that's where you can make the greatest change. Everyone, right? Everyone can make the greatest change because you're able to, with a concerted effort, with a direct action, you're able to really move the needle in that way. Because making food accessible to people, without any kind of charge, just by saying, you're human, so you deserve this. That is the most radical act because you're able to show people, not only the people that you're helping, but the people around you. You're able to show people that not everything has to gain a profit, right? You're able to show people that, you don't need to have a formal structure to enact change. And I don't know. I'm going to murder this Asada Shakur, no pun intended, this Asada Shakur quote, but she said something like, if you're free, if you give me freedom, but you take away all the other resources, then what am I free for, right? Am I just free to starve? And I think that's one of the things that, we often don't, or in a lot of the circles that I'm around, we don't see a lot of those conversations. But yeah, that's my only parting thought.
Yeah, that's a big one. Oh my God, I could talk for another 30 minutes about freedom because I think it's why I left the US, but I'm gonna table that um, for everyone's sake. Okay, but I do have one last question, which is from any facet of what we've discussed as parts of your life, whether it's from being a father, from being an anarchist, a communist, on the board of a nonprofit, um, for whatever gave you a salt and pepper beard. um, what advice would you give to people?
Oh man. Um, the advice that I would give to people would be if they're interested in something. So if you're interested in something, go out and do, right? Don't don't wait. Don't try to fix your skill level or try to gain more knowledge about something. You will get the knowledge, you will get the skills on the ground. And I'm strictly talking about radicalism because that's my whole gig. I mean, if you're trying to become a painter, I mean, maybe different, right? If you're trying to, run a sawzall or operate a CNC machine, definitely learn before you do. But when it comes to radicalism, do, because we need people on the ground. Once you get on the ground, you're going to see people doing the things that you're doing. You're going to be able to learn from the people that are there, and you're going to be able to do something that you can't do if you're on the outside. You're going to be able to vet the information that you're getting because when you're there, you can clearly see who aligns with your values and who doesn't. you can build the skills that will get you to where you want to be from the people that are doing it, rather than learning about, say, the theory of it before you actually, before you actually enact the action, right? It's praxis. Praxis is very big.
Okay, go do it. Y'all heard Marcos. And if you, yeah, and if you've made it all the way through this episode, I imagine you're interested in radicalization. So I'm telling you to go do it as well. All right, I am going to pull a card. Looks like we have it. It
Ooh.
is the moon.
Oh, that's my last name.
Oh, it is. It is your last name. Okay. And that way we're aligned. Okay. So I actually, Marcos gets special privileges because I know him in a certain way. I pulled from the Black Tarot deck, which normally I would not do for someone who does not identify as such, but it's Marcos. Um, so okay, what is the moon card? In a traditional moon card in a regular tarot deck or Rider-Waite, whatever, um, it would be a woman who has crawled out of a murky water and there's something down there lurking for her. Um, but there's a dog and a wolf on one side and she's headed towards something. I know that's a lot to take in. What it generally means is there's an unknown, there's uh but you're still on the right path even though you don't know all of the results, all of what is coming. The dog and the wolf represent independence and the dichotomy of like choosing to be independent and like going my own way, lone wolf energy, and like loyalty and the balance of being a dog that's like in community and with others. Okay.
Nice.
In yeah. In this particular deck, it is a woman who has chosen to dance and be free, which is what you were just saying about if you feel called towards something, if you feel interested in something, going after it and aligning. But she also has a shadow self, but the shadow is also dancing with her because she's chosen this path.
Nice.
Uh, so yeah, and it is also your name.
I'm trying to learn how to shuffle. Do you think that's why there's a dancing component?
Hmm,
Like that little dance. I'm trying to learn how to dance. Yeah.
really?
Is that
What is your dance? Do you salsa? Do you banda? Do you cumbia?
yes?
Do you?
I salsa. I'm Mexican, so I two step to you know a lot of the musics. But I salsa and I cumbia and I bachata just a little bit, in the right context. But I'm trying to learn how to do more like the hip hop dances because it's been many, many years since so maybe that's why the card was pulled.
Yeah. Okay. So you're leaning into dance. All right. So I guess we'll check back and see if you actually followed up with like some hip hop lessons and like learned
Catch, catch me in the Olympics.
right. Learned how to be more embodied in your physical self. Cool. Well, once again, thank you for being here and I will see you around.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye bye.